Hi folks, this is Andy Skinner with Nivedon Engineering. Today I'm going to make some modifications to the saw-sill. The intent is to show you how to pull a saw-sill apart, how to fill it with oil, put it back together again, and I'm going to make a small design change to it. I had a customer notify me that he likes to saw 45s in the bandsaw. That's something I've just never done, and I'm sure I will someday. The problem is the gauge sticks up way too high. We've got to get this gauge down underneath the platten. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and tear this saw-sill down and drain the oil out of it. Okay folks, I have the saw-sill mounted in my vise. First thing I'm going to do is depressurize the system. To do that, I'm going to close the needle valve, make sure it's good and tight, and I'll pull up on this little collar and pull down on the tube. And when I do that, it'll spit. So I want to have it covered because I don't want oil in my face. There, you see that little spit of oil you get? And it'll always do that. I've got my hand over the end. This is where the peanut jar comes in. I drilled 3 1/4 inch holes in it. And I just shove that in there like that, and usually just hang just fine, and that's actually how I'll drain it. And I also have an extra piece of tubing. This one just happens to be 11 inches long. I'll shove that right in there to replace the tube that was there, and I'll stick it in another hole. Okay, and notice that I have pulled the bottle down so that the tubes are not under the oil, because I want to completely drain this thing. And to do that, I'll open this gauge up, or the valve up, and then I'll just cycle this back and forth, and it'll just spit that oil right out. And I'll run it back and forth a few times. Now I've got it drained. There's a little bit of residual oil in the lines, but that's okay. And then I'm going to shove it all the way back in. I want it in this position. I'll tighten the needle valve. At this point, I have all the oil out of the saw-sill. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this saw-sill apart. And I think I'll just pull those off and just let them drip. Saw-sill is drained. Probably while I have it in the vise, I'll pop this hose off too. These hoses come right out. I'm not going to use either one of these hoses. Now, let's go back to the saw. Okay, I'll slide the saw-sill back onto the saw. And I don't want the gauge up here anymore. I want to tip it to clear down about here, and I think that'd be fine. It's down out of the way where it won't get bumped, and you could put material right over the top of it. But I have a problem. When I tighten this, the gauge is going to touch the edge of the saw and put it in some tension. So I got some 3/8 flat washers here. I think I'll just slip a couple on there, and that's all it takes. That looks good. Just a little bit of extra clearance. Okay, that looks better. Everything clears the platten just fine now. Okay, but now I have a problem in that my tubes will all be different lengths. And what am I going to do about that? Let's just put some new tubing on it. I had to cut a new tube length here. The elbow fitting would not work down here, so I put a straight fitting in it. It looks like it's going to work just fine. And I had to change the tube length here. I have not connected this tube yet because I'm going to use this to fill it with oil. Remember, it doesn't have any oil in it. Here's something I had to modify. I had to add a total of 4 3/8 heavy flat washers here to move this out so that the gauge doesn't jam against the casting. In future designs, I'll probably put a spacer of some kind in there. But for right now, in this video, 4 3/8 flat washers worked great. And I put the flat washers between the nut and the manifold and tightened this nut down to this bolt head really tight before I ever put it on the saw. I'm going to go ahead and disassemble it, and we'll fill it with oil. To fill this with oil, I use Walmart SuperTech Type F hydraulic or automatic transmission fluid. I'll go ahead and fill up my little peanut jar here. By the way, this is a Planter's peanut, dry roasted peanut jar that I drilled 4 1/4 inch or 3 1/4 inch holes in it. Now, I suck the oil in through this bottom tube, loosen the needle valve so you can move it freely. I'll shove this all the way in, and I want 1 full stroke of oil and no more, because it needs to have a lot of air in it. So that's the limit of how much oil you can put in one of these and have it still function properly. So I'll slide this on. I have to leave this open because it's got to expel air out this fitting. And I'll just slowly suck oil in. And I want to make sure I don't get any air in the bottom chamber. And you can see the oil level going down as I pull on it. And I just pull really slow and let it suck that oil in. That's all the way. And all I do is, once I've got that done, I pull this off. It's got the correct amount of oil in it at this point. And I'll tip this up and plug it in right there. That's all there is to it. Take a towel and wipe it off. Okay, let's go ahead and mount this modified saw-sill on the machine. Put the jam nut back on here. Tighten that one good. I like this ratchet wrench for putting these on with. It makes it a lot easier. And then we'll just tighten this up right here with the top of it just about flush with the casting, top of the cap. Okay, here's the finished installation or modification, folks. I want to point out that this top tube was replaced, and I cut the new one 8 3/4 inches long. This bottom tube had to be replaced, and I cut it exactly 7 inches long. Let's give it a try. I haven't even tried it yet, so we'll see if it works. Now remember, I just put oil in this, and so there's a lot of air in the upper part of the chamber. So to prime it, what I do is I just open this and I let this thing down, and I'll raise it several times. And what's happening here is, as I bring it up, oil is flowing into the top chamber, and the air is gathering right in the top here. And it's very important that this fitting be right on top, the highest point, because when I do this, when I let the saw down and it pulls that cylinder out, it pushes all that air right out of the top and back down into the other side of the piston, which actually in this case is just your tank. So I go up and down once or twice just to pump the air out of it, and that should be fine. And actually, as you use the saw, it's continually purging itself. Lock the cylinder. I can't even get it far enough down to hold itself. It wants to go over, so I'll open this a little bit and get it down to where it's over center. And there we go. It's working perfectly. And I actually like the gauge where it is, down a little lower. So again, to review, here's what I had to do to make this modification. I had to add 4 3/8 heavy flat washers right here to push this thing out so that the gauge cleared the casting. I had to change this tube length to 8 3/4 inches long. I had to change this tube length to 7 inches long, and I had to take the 90 or the street L fitting out and put a straight fitting in right here under the needle valve. And it seems to work just fine. In future designs, I'll probably replace those flat washers with a nicer looking spacer, but the end effect is going to be the same. So with that, I'll wrap up this video, and thanks for watching.